Hello, Bob. Here's your booster, and I have gone through it and fixed the problem that I was telling you about. And the port that I've been talking about, is directly underneath this fitting, and it goes all the way down and intersects with this central chamber right here. And in between, there's a fitting that inside here that has to be unscrewed, and then you could actually theoretically see all the way through to there. And when it terminates down here, you've got a hole that is the diameter of the tip of a needle point, and it gets clogged up easily. Ordinarily, the brake fluid and the pressure will flush it out, but that's obviously in your case it did not happen. Anyway, we've got a good booster. What we're going to do first here is we're going to check our vacuum, and this is both of these gauges will read our vacuum, which is essentially what my vacuum pump can put out. And this gauge right here will read a constant vacuum that the pump's putting out. And this gauge, the more the booster is activated, the more this will go to 0. And then when the booster is fully activated, this will go to 0. And while we're maintaining vacuum over here, so we know that we got the differential on either side of the diaphragm is good, and that there's no leaks here. And we'll also check leaks here when we turn the machine on. And speaking of the vacuum diaphragm, right back here is your fill plug for the booster when it has a leather diaphragm. This booster has been converted at some time to have the rubber diaphragm, and what the factory wants you to do is to reverse install that plug so that nobody can come along and try to fill this thing with mineral oil thinking there's a leather diaphragm still inside there. So that's why I did that. I mean, if there's something about it for concourse purposes that you need to reverse that process, well, just split the can and reverse the plug. But otherwise, it's supposed to be reversed like that, so no one's going to screw around with your booster and introduce mineral oil where it doesn't belong. In there is Teflon grease, permanent Teflon grease for the diaphragm to ride in. Your diaphragm, by the way, was pretty much dry in there, so tell whoever rebuilt it before to make sure they put lots of grease in there. Now then, on this side we've got the hydraulic, and we've got input and output. And what we're looking for is the input, which is a function of the master cylinder. I don't even know if you can call it a master cylinder. It's the strangest little thing. This little pump lever right there, and all it does is pumps a 1/4-inch rod, and that's your master cylinder. 1/4-inch diameter rod, about 3 inches long, rides in a couple of O-rings, and that's the master cylinder. It's a little problematic, but it gets the job done. So what happens is this gauge maxes out. This gauge follows suit and maxes out to the final pressure that my master cylinder can generate, which is generally 350 psi. These gauges are tied together, and this is our output. So this is going to measure what the booster can do. And this gauge is going to go up to 350, and then when it reaches 350, this gauge takes over and reads our final output pressure. And this pressure is going to be double of the input pressure, because this booster is a 2-to-1 boost ratio. And first we're going to test our test our vacuum. And while those are building vacuum, we come over here and we put our hand over the air filter to make sure there's no suction, not pulling my rubber gloves in, and obviously as I put my hand on there, nothing changes. This is our test port right here, and this is something that you guys can test at your shop. So if I pull this out, got a vacuum leak there, and you can see the booster doesn't like that. So now we put this back in. So you guys can put a vacuum gauge on there, and you can test your booster for function in situ. That's one of the many ways you can test it. So we're building the vacuum back up. All right, now we're going to close our valve, and we're going to operate the master cylinder, and here we go. Alright, you can see our final output pressure is well over 700, 600, 700, 750 in that range. And that's because we're maxed out at 350 right here. And we still have vacuum here, and we're almost at zero. I have to pump this thing a couple more times. Let's recycle it and try it again. And you'll see this gauge go to zero. As I say, it's a function of my master cylinder, not your booster. Alright, your booster is fully applied. And you can see we got full pressure here, full output pressure there. We come over here and we check the booster for leaks. The only leak I have is from my fitting right here, but that's only due to the amount of pressure I can put on this thing by hand. In the car, you'll obviously have it tightened much more than that. But checking, we got no leaks here where this screws in the cover. Might as well turn this thing off. We'll recycle again. Something else that's interesting about this booster is this vacuum check valve screws right into a nut, a loose nut inside there. Ordinarily that nut is kept in place by the spring inside here, the return spring for the booster diaphragm. But in theory, that nut, if you unscrewed this vacuum check valve, that nut could fall out. So it usually will stay in place, but it's not held. It's not caged in any way at all. It's a loose nut inside there. So let's do this booster again. I forgot to turn off my recycle it, release the hydraulic pressure. Alright, there we go again. Does not get any better than that. It's a darn good booster. I'd put it on my car. Thank you, sir.